My name is Amy Ongeso, and it is so lovely to see all of you who've joined us. Just by way of introduction, I work for the Legal Empowerment Network that is convened by NAMATI. Today's meeting will be chaired by my colleague, Andrew Mackey from JEI. Welcome, everybody. Andrew?
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everyone as well. It's really exciting to be back here together for the second iteration in our conversations.
Bonjour.
Bonjour and welcome. It's really wonderful to be here for the second conversation in our series of conversations with legal practitioners in the field of legal empowerment in West Africa. This is the Anglophone call, so it will be entirely in English. However, there's a wonderful series of conversations also going on in French that Amy and other colleagues are participating in. I think, I'm sure we're going to be joined by a few other people along the way, but I'd like to start on time and hopefully have plenty of time for questions and answer. And the way we'll start is by doing a quick round of introductions. And so I'll begin. My name is Andrew Mackey, and I'm co-director of Justice and Empowerment Initiatives, an organization based here in Lagos, Nigeria. And it's a tremendous pleasure to be here with all of you today. And can I ask my colleagues from IWE to introduce themselves next?
Hello everyone, my name is Ismail Abdullahi, Programs Manager at Isawali Empowerment Initiative. Together with me,
the Program Officer Legal Empowerment and Rule of Law, IWE.
Thank you. Andrew, over to you.
Wonderful, welcome to you both. And can we pass to our colleague, John Lahai? John, would you like to say a quick word of introduction?
I'm John Augustine Lahai. I'm the National Coordinator for an umbrella organization of legal empowerment organizations in Sierra Leone. Essentially,
wonderful.
We are sorry.
Wonderful. Welcome again, John, and glad to have you with us. And I equally see Lawrence on the call. Lawrence, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Lawrence, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Hello everybody. This is Lawrence Yelu, and I'm the country director for Accountability Lab Liberia. And yes, I started with French, but I'm from Liberia and I love French. And so, yes, it's a pleasure being here.
Wonderful, welcome. It's good to have you. And our colleagues from NAMATI, Amy Mutano, would you like to say a word of introduction?
Hi, everyone.
Fatmata.
Sorry, go ahead, Fatmata.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fatmata, Programs Manager, NAMATI, Sierra Leone.
Wonderful, Fatmata, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Amy Ongeso. I work for the Legal Empowerment Network that is convened by NAMATI. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. Mutanu?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mutanu. I am Amy's colleague. I'm also based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'll be your tech support for today. Thank you for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Mutano. Good. Well, I think we have a really interesting topic to discuss on today. And before we jump right in, I wanted to say a few words to kind of frame the conversation. First, I'll say that the conversation is being recorded, and I hope and trust that that's okay with everyone on the call. Please speak up if that's not the case. As previously, our intent is to capture this conversation and reproduce it in short text and also maybe audio as well, so that others can learn from this, and we can really build a community of legal practitioners across the region, and learn from one another and collaborate, and so on. And second, I would like to say that our intent is for this space to be somewhat informal and practical. So we hope that everyone will feel comfortable, sharing, very honest reflections on their work, and equally a space that we can all kind of respect and support one another in what we're doing. So hopefully a bit informal, and hopefully really we can focus on talking about the differences in our respective work, because I think in many ways, as we highlight the differences in what we're doing, we all learn from each other and can think about how we can each innovate our work, albeit in different contexts, but with similar strategies. So that's by way of introduction. Before we get into the topic, I wanted to ask Amina to just say a word of hello, because she has just joined. Amina from IWay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I just came on now. It's really nice to be here, and I look forward to us having a really interactive session today and learning from each other. That's why we're all here. So, thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amina, and welcome. And it seems we have, no, it's the same Lawrence. Okay, so let's proceed. So our topic today is about paralegal training and support or supervision. The idea is that this conversation, like the last conversation and the ones that will come later throughout this year, is focused around a particular issue that we want to really dive into deeply and think about and ask each other questions about, and compare and contrast and whatnot. So our topic is paralegal training and support and supervision, and we're going to somewhat divide the conversation into two parts, starting with a conversation about training and methods and issues that come up in paralegal training. And then we'll, I believe, transition a bit to kind of what happens after the training, like what kinds of support do our organizations provide for the paralegals we train once they're, handling cases and whatnot. We are very fortunate to have a short presentation by our colleagues at IWay on their paralegal training model. And that will kick off our conversation on that topic. So without any further ado, I want to hand over to colleagues at IWay. And I believe they have some slides they're equally going to share with us. So over to you, colleagues at IWay.
All right, thank you once again. This is Hafsat Buhari from Isawali Empowerment Initiative. Under our paralegal, as you can see on the screen, we are going to talk about paralegal trainings. And under our paralegal trainings here at IWay, we start with what we call the basic paralegal training. The basic paralegal training normally entails understanding the concept of paralegal, which includes history of paralegal, who is a paralegal, and who should be a paralegal and their functions, and their required skills they should acquire as paralegals. And seeking justice. Under the basic training, we have seeking justice, which comprises of justice systems, that's the criminal and civil cases, mediations, negotiations, and cases of GBV, and how to tackle them, and also cases of violence against women. Sorry. And under the basic training, we also have human rights, which is which is contained in our constitution. That's chapter 4 of the 1999 constitution. We train them on that. And finally, we have the ethics, the paralegal ethics, which are all under the basic training. And moving on to the specialized training, we normally do specialized training when we identify needs from maybe the community or the type of cases our paralegals are handling. Under the specialized training, we have trainings on family law, which consists of maintenance, marital disputes, child custody, and the likes. And number 2 is the economic injustice, which comprises of the unpaid wages, compensations, breach of contracts, cases of that sort. And we have private violence also under the specialized training, the SGBV, domestic violence, criminal justice system. That's when we train our paralegals on how to take cases in the correctional centers and police station services for new arrestees or detainees. And next slide, please. Emmy. Thank you. We have on-field trainings. This on-field trainings comprises of paralegals plus paralegals. They learn from each other. We have more experienced paralegals who supervise and give advice for the paralegals, the new legal advice, following up cases together with them. So they go and do these cases together. So from there, they learn on field. And we have refresher trainings. These refresher trainings, okay. These refresher trainings are done well if we identify areas are weak or they need more capacity building on. So that's when we do the refresher trainings. We have continuous feedback where we use our platforms like our WhatsApp. We use calls, phone calls, that's weekly phone calls, supervisors call them, and supervisory visits, that's the lawyers go to the next slide. Okay, and okay, I don't know if you can hear me. Like, okay, I've made mention of the weekly phone calls and visitations. We have exchange learnings where we visit other organizations with paralegals when we go together with our paralegals so that they will learn of each other and learn new activities to be carried out in their communities. And we have training of trainers. That's when we train more experienced paralegals to be trainers of new paralegals in their communities, where they train them on the basic paralegal trainings and the specialized trainings. Thank you, and I hope it was detailed and explanatory. Thank you. And we'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hafsat. That was really a wonderful presentation, and I think gave us all a really nice grounding in practically speaking what we're talking about when we say paralegal training. I think probably all of us heard in Aiwei's presentation a lot of things that sound very similar to us, or very familiar to us, I should say. I can say, certainly for myself, some of the topics and the strategies they use to train, the different phases of training, the field training versus kind of more classroom training, all of these very much resonate with the work that we do at JEI. However, what we want to try to do in this conversation is, well, both ask questions of Aiwei, but also share from our own experiences areas that might be different, things that maybe we didn't hear that Aiwei does, but that we do in our own work, so that we can all kind of understand the whole range of different tools and methods and strategies that we're collectively using to train paralegals. Before I call on some people for interventions, I wanted to quickly note that I think we had, yes, we have 2 additional people that joined, and I want to let them to just say their names and where they're from so that we all know each other on the line. Jalo, would you like to say a word from your side?
Jalo, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Very well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yes, my name is Mohamed Jallo from Sierra Leone. I'm with LIWA, and at the same time with NACO, National Coalition for Community Legal Empowerment.
Wonderful. Welcome, Jalo, and
thank you
for joining.
Thank you.
And Adeshola, would you like to say your name and a quick word of introduction?
Okay, hi everyone. Apologies for joining the call a little bit late. I was just being caught up in the meeting. I am Adeshola Gbolabo. I'm in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. I work with Justice and Empowerment Initiative, JEI. So I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Welcome, Shola. Good. So again, our focus is on paralegal training, and I would be happy to call on people to hear their own reflections on Aiwei's presentation. But if anyone would like to speak first, please feel free to raise your hand and you can jump in. Otherwise,
Hi, Andrew. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was waiting to see if anyone would like to step in and
Hello.
And hi, Fatmata.
Yes,
please go ahead.
I would like to do my presentation quickly. We can run into a meeting in the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, yeah, please, if any questions you have for Aiwei or reflections on how your own paralegal training is different from the model that they shared, would be very, very welcome.
Yes, I want to share our own model.
Brilliant. Please go ahead.
Yeah, our paralegal training and support supervision methodology, we use a mixture of both classroom training as well as on-job training. We don't do long trainings as Aiwei. We do short trainings with a minimum of 3 days per intervals, sometimes a week, depending on the materials we want to cover. We prefer short training because it's more dynamic when you do short trainings. You do a number of short trainings and then you do one long training. And on-job training is a continuous process. As we go around, we undertake that in response to a case on the ground or scenario. For example, a paralegal is faced with a difficulty handling a case all by him or herself. We'll call the supervisor for further information or guide to handle that particular case. It all depends on the situation on the ground. For effective classroom training, we always do several things. One, access to the most updated laws, to the primary laws on the subject matter. It's important for the paralegals to see the law, see to it, turn it, open it, be familiar with the scenarios and the language. We also provide access to relevant instruments that paralegals might have to deal with. The sections, we provide access to relevant instruments that paralegals might have to deal with in handling a case. For example, a lease agreement or environmental impact assessment reports or environment license conditions, etc. We provide primary materials in a form of manuals and laws such as the Mines and Mineral Act, Environmental Protection Agency, Cap 122, with a simplified explanation of these laws that the paralegal can consult when dealing with a case. We ensure we provide resource persons who is specialists in the relevant areas, as well as resource persons from institutions that operate within the relevant area of the training. For example, if we are dealing with issues that relates to police powers, we bring a senior person from the police to facilitate or provide the training. The classroom training are mostly scenario-based training to bring the subject matter to life, with a lot of opportunities for participants to see and for exchanges. That's experience sharing. Additionally, we do a pre and post test to gauge the knowledge of the participants on the subject, as well as how much they understand the subject before the training, and post test are to test how much they have learned. We also do daily quizzes to keep participants on their toes, making sure that they read the materials given to them. In real sense, test participants' daily learning outcomes. On the supervision, we do both in-person supervision as well as remote supervision. In-person supervision requires the supervisor to travel to regional offices to meet with paralegals, inspect case files, actions taken, discuss specific strategies adopted in dealing with the case, steps taken on the case, institutions engaged, results attained, and the next step. We look at the entire element of the case. Part of the supervision is learning about the paralegal's unique perspective of handling the case, because they are constantly in the field, doing the work on a daily basis, supporting people to resolve their justice issues. So we see it important to learn from their perspective, which would be useful in the course of our work. During the supervision process, we also undertake on-the-job field-based training, where we discuss laws that apply, steps that have been taken, rights of the laws, set out obligations of the law, etc. That is also a time when the field-based training happened. The remote work is mostly done through telephones, WhatsApp calls that involve urgent matters that may arise, and so we use that opportunity to provide answers to quick questions, legal advice, access to perhaps things that the paralegal do not have at hand, And sometimes we also give detailed supervision, especially now that we have Salesforce. It's much easier to do that because supervisors don't need to travel to have access to the files. They can easily access these files through their computers or tablets. The details of the case can be discussed from anywhere. The training is based on specific subject matter, like I mentioned, land laws, contract laws, or whatever it is, and paralegal skills on mediation, negotiation, etc.
Wonderful. But Mata, you've given us,
going back to the other question, I would say
sorry, Fatmata, you've given us so much wonderful information to kind of chew on. I wonder if I could ask you to pause there so that we can kind of keep the conversation moving. But a tremendous amount to reflect on, from paralegal quizzes to involving, you said, police and other authorities when teaching certain subjects, to different methods of supervision and technologies used and so on. There's frankly a tremendous amount there to kind of unpack. Oh no, now we lost Fatmata. In any case, I was going to try to pivot and invite someone else to share. Maybe I could ask our colleague Lawrence. Lawrence, has anything that was shared from Fatmata at Namati or our colleagues Iwe in Nigeria struck you as being, very different from the approach that you take in training paralegals?
Thank you so much. I think one thing that Andrew and team, one thing that we do that maybe the community engagement, I like the fact that the on-field visits and the on-field training, I think is much more active. The pre and post test as well, those are things that, and I think each of these organizations, what I'm hearing that is happening on the table is that they are engaging actively as per the context that is prevailing to them. But for us, we work in ways that we engage the police and the court, and so that the cases that we pick up, even when they are statutory cases that come to us, we then transfer them to the court and the police, but then we go beyond just the paralegal and go to having conversation with our mediation process with the both parties, just basically to kind of hold on and let the law take its course. I think it's something unique. And if the paralegals are really dwelling within the communities, they are not coming from without the communities, I think those are things that, because once they live in the community, they understand exactly what happened on a daily basis in the community. Those are strategies, but engaging directly with the police and letting paralegals do their work and with the expert advice that they get from us, I think most of the things that were said are things that we do, but I just thought to add the two pieces. Yeah.
That's really great. Thank you, Lawrence, and super interesting additions, kind of contrasts. We have a hand up from ITEL. Maybe can you come in and identify yourself so that we all know who you are, and if you have a comment on the topic, please share.
Andrew, the problem with ITEL is that he's not connected to audio. I suspect it's maybe Patrick John Bull from Sierra Leone trying to join.
Okay.
I'll chat him separately.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. Maybe Jallo, could I put the question to you? Are there unique things from your paralegal training that that really you haven't heard anyone say yet? Either about the methods that you use, about quizzes or tests, or about how you really make sure your paralegals are ready to hit the ground running once they conclude. Would you like to share from your side?
Yes, Andrew. Thank you so much for for the facilitation. Yeah. Here in Sierra Leone, since we started the legal empowerment framework program under OSIWA, actually, according to the Legal Aid Board Act 2012, all volunteers are supposed to go through a formal training before being recognized as paralegals. But what has been going on was that the Legal Aid Board itself doesn't have the capacity to conduct a formal training for the volunteers. So all this while, what has been going on was that OSIWA, NAMATI, here in Sierra Leone have actually championed the training of our paralegals. So the method that they have been using all this while is that they have a set of training manuals on paralegal. Apparently, the one developed by Team Up for Justice has been predominantly used to train our volunteers here as paralegals. So more of our approaches has been training session, organizing training sessions, bringing all of us together and then doing the training using a manual, a paralegal training manual. So after that kind of formal setting, and when we should have come back to our different locations, so the legal officers from each organization to provide one-on-one training, like on-the-job training. That was what I think I saw one of your approaches that you have been using. That one-on-one training, on-the-job training. For example, if the paralegal is out in the field, he or she come across the contact with any case that needs consultation with the legal officer. They will contact the legal officer, and the legal officer will provide that legal information to the paralegal for onward transmission to the client out in the field. And then on a more regular basis, the lawyer has about 2 days that he or she normally goes out to the paralegal offices and provides a kind of on-the-job training. If there are any issues that needs to be clarified in terms of within the framework of the law, the lawyers or the legal officer normally give permissions for the paralegals, to bring up any issue that they think they want to know more about. Then also there has been a training that's where they provide context-specific training. For example, like on land issues, all the legal provisions or legal regulations within that covers the land, for example, in Sierra Leone, or gender-based violence, we do bring paralegals together to provide that context-specific training based on the issues. Then, of course, another thing that have been going on was that since we started the paralegal campaign here, we haven't gone to any formal paralegal training, and that is where our colleague Kaj, Mr. Patrick John Bull, comes in very strong. Maybe he'll be in a better position to give you an idea of how far he's gone and what he's actually trying to do now in terms of providing a formal and accredited training to individuals to become full-blown paralegal. Andrew, I have one question for you and Fatima.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, the paralegals that you already have out there, are they formally trained and accredited paralegals? I mean, going to, like, when you go to university, you have your graduation and then you get your degree or diploma that is recognized at the national level. That's anywhere you go, you can have a job. Is that the case with your paralegals out there?
That's a great question, and I'm going to pass it to my colleague Shola. Shola, could you come in on that and the question about sort of recognition of paralegals that we train?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, as regards recognition, especially in Nigeria, we have made frantic effort to see how our paralegals are actually recognized. Just like you rightly pointed out, in schools you are issued certificates and you can go anywhere. But in our own case, we do 6 months intensive training, and we have designed this curriculum to actually learn different aspects of law. So what we do on our own side is we actually issue certificates, and we have also, in fact, presently we're also doing to see how we can meet with government partners like the Legal Aid Council, because in Nigeria, the Legal Aid Council had actually made provision for paralegals. So we have taken the discussion from the state level to the national level to see how we can meet the national director. And we have made presentations. They have come for our own, they have come, we organize seminars in which they have also been part of the seminars. They have had presentations from our paralegals. They are well impressed. They have seen our curriculum for how we train paralegals. So it depends on the different countries, as I speak, like I will say. But for us in Nigeria and in Port Harcourt, in Lagos, we have actually taken this discussion right to government authorities to see how our paralegals can be recognized right here in Nigeria, even outside Nigeria, because we have referred to provisions of the law that actually recognize paralegals. So the push is still ongoing to see how we can actually seal it up and how they can gain that national recognition. But as far as our work is concerned in communities within the state, I think they are well recognized, and it actually gives them an edge because, for example, with the training, it's very easy to actually employ them in law offices and what have you. So with the kind of training that they get from us, so but like I said, as regards that recognition nationally, we are on it. We have made that discussion has got to that level. So that's
awesome.
Just my contribution from now.
Thanks, Shola. And actually, maybe Amina could comment on that. Amina from IWA, since it's also something that IWA has been pushing and pushing and pushing for quite some time. Amina, would you like to come in?
Yes. Yeah, like you said, this is something we've been working on, and it's actually something we've been working on together with IWA, and we've had support from Namati as well. And something we will share because it hasn't really gone out, but that we the paralegal ethics and the basic paralegal curriculum has been approved by the Legal Aid Council. So the other aspect is still on the recognition of paralegals, and that is also what we're working on. So I believe JEI and us will still continue to push for that to get recognition. I'd also like to share that for us at IWA, the paralegals that we work with, they're from the rural communities, and the literacy levels are low, especially for the females. So it's real basic paralegal training. So they're nowhere near being trained the way Mohammed was asking earlier on. We're not at that level with them, but we just know that it's really important to have community-based paralegals in the communities because they're rendering such great services for people in their communities, and especially the women. You know, when we first started, women would not join. We couldn't get women train, to join, to be trained as community-based paralegals. But those that have joined, now you find that they themselves talk about how their esteem, or they're looked at with such high esteem in their communities. Some get called to the police stations to come and handle cases. Some get called by the traditional rulers to come and handle cases. So for a real patriarchal community like ours, which is not in northern Nigeria, where women are not really supposed, still, especially in rural communities, that women are not supposed to be seen, or to be heard, to have them and to see that the males themselves are recognizing them and calling them, and even males come to them when they have problems and they want them resolved. So for us, we're really proud of that, to see that this is how far our female paralegals are going. And it's maybe one of our challenges, and it's a question that I asked before somewhere, is still on getting more women to be trained. So even though we have these ones and they're starting to, and they're role models to others, but it's still a challenge for us. And I don't know if it's a challenge for anybody else here in this meeting, and what you do I don't know whether you have the same sort of context as we do, and what you do to address those challenges to get more women to train. Because one of the things that you'll hear women say is, some of them that we have trained and then eventually some of them have dropped out, is they'll say, my husband doesn't want me going, maybe to the police station or something like that. But then we have some where there's one, because in some communities, the men don't want women to address them. And so she goes with her husband. So he's there as her backup support. And when they see that, oh, okay, she's come with her husband, then they allow her to interact. So these are some of the issues. This is our own lived reality. This is our context in which we're dealing in the rural communities.
Thank you, Amina. That is so powerful, and I think really hits hard on the question of inclusivity and what steps do we all take to make sure that we, I guess, are recruiting the right people to be paralegals, and I guess retaining them. I have lots of reflections on that from our work. We have those challenges all the time. However, I know my colleague Fatmata wants to come in, and John Bull as well. So maybe I'll let them go first and then come back around. Amy, I see that you also would like to come in. So maybe over to Fatmata, and then John, and then Amy.
Yes, it's Patrick here, over here. Indeed, the issue of paralegals being recognized nationally is always a problem. For us in Sierra Leone, well, we have the Legal Aid Board Act, which gives recognition to paralegals. The problem we have now is that even though we have developed curriculum and it has been validated even by the board and it's been recognized even by the government, yet we don't have institutions really accredited before in order to train the paralegals so that they could get the necessary qualification as provided for by the law. It is only very recently, last November last year, that my organization having established an institution to train paralegals. That institution was accredited by the Tertiary Education Commission. It is the
Hi, Patrick.
Legal empowerment and technology with knowledge of the law, so that they can use it. Has been accredited. I say that institution has been accredited, and we are training paralegals. Yet we still have this problem of the Legal Aid Board, which has the mandate according to the Act, in order to approve institutions that could train paralegals nationally. They have this problem of them still, even though our organization is accredited by them, yet we still have this problem of having the training itself set up at national level, so or even at district level, because it has to be funded, definitely, and then the paralegals has to be trained and then being used in various places as per the Act, because every chiefdom is to have at least 2 paralegals. So it's the national kick-off, yes. What we have done was just to provide the institution, the only institution accredited for now, and we are employing the Legal Aid Board so that they can also push the government to ensure that the act that was established since 2011, enacted in 2011, and this is 10 years ago down the line, nothing else has been done. But we are still liaising with government and other institutions and other bodies so that we can put into effect what the law has been, what has already been enacted. The law that has been enacted, what it says should be put into practice. But it's always a problem, really, it's always a problem. As in Nigeria, they are state level, they are doing it, but at national level is still a problem. And so also with us, we are doing it at individual levels in organizations. And then now we have established as a coalition, we have tried to establish a coalition so that we can push this idea of having the paralegals offices established at national level as provided for by the law. Yet it is still a daunting task. And now privately, our organization has established an institution so that we can have access to this institution and then have the paralegals trained so that at any time governments get a kickoff, it is easy for us to have the paralegals that to be deployed at chiefdom level. So it's always a problem, but we can still fight it on.
Thanks, Patrick. That's really interesting. The reflection on kind of, I guess, Amina had mentioned the adoption of, or the approval of the paralegal training ethics and course here in Nigeria. And I think probably in many of our contexts, there's different levels of formalization, I would call it, of paralegal training and paralegal curriculum. And so it sounds like that's, you know, really interesting to hear where you guys are at in that process with, you know, having an accredited institution. I want to jump, Fatmata said that she wanted to come back in. Fatmata, would you like to jump in now? Lots of interesting points to be discussed.
Hello.
Or, oh, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to know if I went through to answer the questions. I talked about the methodology we use, the supervision, and then I cited some examples. I don't know if you heard me. I don't know where I stopped when I got the interruption.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think we heard you shared quite a bit of really rich and interesting examples. I think we're trying to, I guess, round up the conversation about training and a bit transition into the questions around supervision and take them a little bit one and then the other, since they're a little bit separate, although obviously very connected. So maybe before we jump to supervision, maybe I'll ask if Amy or frankly anyone else has other either questions or ideas or pieces they want to pose, reflections they want to pose about paralegal training from what others have said or otherwise.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the exchange and the contributions from the organizations that are present. One thing that I have noticed is that the training that has been mentioned, save for Amina's example, has quite some academic rigor to it, you know, the testing, the daily quizzes, for people to be able to know the law, use the law, and, you know, interact with the law. But one thing that at least I am grappling with in the country, in Kenya, and other organizations are grappling with is when we do this kind of training, obviously with the aim of recognition, are we becoming too elitist? Are we then changing what access to justice is surely meant to be at grassroots level? We come from different contexts in a country, and I think it's the same for many sub-Saharan African countries. You'll find that access to education is still a problem. And in that community where access to justice is a problem, then there are even more grave injustices. Then you're telling these people that have not had access to education that they have to have some sort of, you know, reading, I don't know, literacy capacity that they have not had for a long time. And then we're saying, okay, fine, the training is shaped like this. And so we only take people who are able to do this. So I understand that the context is different. In an urban setting is different. Some communities are way ahead and that there's no problem with literacy. But we do not want to leave people behind. So my point is that training, I think, has to be adapted to the different contexts. I'll give a personal example. When I was working with paralegals, one of our best paralegals was a gentleman who could barely read or write. But what he had, the richness he had, was the knowledge of the community and how to navigate that community and how to solve that. You cannot academicize. I don't know if that's an English word. You cannot academicize that. That is such intangible richness that I think we hope not to lose when we try and have, this rigor, which is appreciated, but let us not lose the essence of, community and grassroots work.
Yeah, Andrew.
Wonderful,
Andrew,
Amy. Yeah, Jallo, please come in. But I just want to say
Andrew.
Thank you, Amy. I think that's a really useful reflection to kind of grapple with. Jallo, over to you.
Yes, Andrew. I very much want to throw my weight behind Amina and Amy in terms of the level of academic background for someone to become a paralegal. Here in Africa, to be more specific, in Sierra Leone, we have issues of human rights violations and abuses taking place right in the heart of communities, rural communities. And then the question we do always ask ourselves, in those rural communities, how many paralegals are based in those communities to provide support for those people? How many legal officers that have the ability to provide support for those people? And here we are talking about access to justice, leaving no one behind. That simply means that let's put academic education behind ourselves if we really want to ensure, because quite a good number of women, for example, like in Sierra Leone, are illiterate. They are stark illiterate. They have never been to school. And these are people who are based in the heart of communities. And they are also being vulnerable to violence and abuse. So first and foremost, how do we ensure that these people know the law themselves and are able to use the law to solve their day-to-day problems? So which means we have to go a little bit beyond recognizing formal education as a criteria for someone to become a paralegal. So for example, like here in Sierra Leone, what we did the whole of last year, we have a pool of community-based justice advocates who are women who have never been to school, some of them, and some of them are kind of semi-illiterate, but they are based in the community, providing justice to them, supporting their communities and themselves. And it's happening right now as I'm talking to you. So the issue of having paralegals going through the formal system accredited by the Ministry of Education, having formal certificates, yes, it is something, it's another approach. But I want us to look at the women or people based in communities who have never been to school, but yet they are based in communities. And that makes the whole paralegal campaign more sustainable in communities across.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jallo. Super interesting, and really appreciate. Patrick has his hand up. Patrick, would you like to come back in on this question, on this point?
Yes. I really want us to know first who a paralegal is. Because if we are saying that when you are talking about academic qualification, it's a little bit making it clumsy or somehow difficult, I think whatever you like, a paralegal needs to know something about the law. And the law is something that is elitist, whichever way you look at it. It is written, it is code, and you have to read it. But the level of training of paralegals could vary. For example, if you say you want to have a paralegal, those who are trained as provided for by the act that we have in Sierra Leone, the act is saying that a paralegal must be somebody who has gone to a tertiary institution and has been an accredited institution, and that person has at least attained a year or two. Must have gone through for 1 year or two, either a certificate or a diploma. That is the level that the act says. But that doesn't stop that those people can still go into communities and now can train other paralegals who at local level, they may not be literate, they may not be educated, and they can also know the law, because these who are trained in the elitist form can go and disseminate the information to these others in the communities, and then you can get a care of other paralegals. But really, the knowledge of a paralegal has to be based on the law, and the law prevailing law within the country. And then you can now cascade it to other levels at community level. Even the illiterate people can know the law by you explaining to them what the law is and how it operates. So that is the kind of situation, that is the kind of way we in my organization we are doing. So even though we have paralegals that have gone through the institution and have attained the diploma, yet they go to these communities and then they have other cadre of people who are not necessarily paralegals as they are called according to the Act, but yet they do the work of a paralegal. And I share the experience that I had with Namati. For example, the Namati experience of having barefooted paralegals in the Philippines, that these are a group of young graduates in the law who went and then trained people in the communities, and then they have cascaded that into different levels. So we can begin that way, but to say we have paralegals whereby you could not have an institution for them to go through, it creates a problem, because people will say, I'm a paralegal. But then when you ask him what the basic laws are and how the laws are operated in the country, they don't know. And the paralegal must be somebody with a knowledge of the law, which he can disseminate to the people for them also to know and use that law in order to develop themselves and their community.
Wonderful, Patrick. I appreciate your passion, and I would add that I think in so many ways there's not a single right answer to this, right? I mean, all of our work is very much tailored to context, and I think by asking these challenging questions like Amy posed, we all equally, I think, can enrich our work. I would just share a single example from my own work, and I hear someone else that wants to come in.
Actually, Andrew, sorry to interrupt, but John Lahai's hand has been physically up for a long time. I think it's exhausted now. So,
oh, I didn't
if
see.
If he could chip in just before, yeah.
Oh, please, John, come on in.
Thank you, Amy. I was listening carefully, and I think the discussion is getting exciting. For us, I was just going to add to what CAJ. We see CAJ as an opportunity for us to scale up the training of our paralegals across the country. And we want to make sure that it caters not just for those that are educated, but for those that are in community as well. Because if we are talking about sustainability in the context of scarce resources, we need to revert to community paralegals, because they stay in their communities, they know the structures, they know the laws as well. And let me just add that CAJ is not only training elites, but it's also training law officers who are people who most of whom are not educated. So it's not just about academia, it's also about the role these people are playing in their respective communities. But the discussion is quite a learning for me, and it's preparing me for the next shot for NACO in terms of building the capacity of our paralegals. The job, Sierra Leone can't survive without paralegals if we want to have access to justice for us, for all. And we need everyone on board. Be you educated, I mean, in terms of, be you literate or not. I mean, that's the next step we're going to look at.
Literate.
Thank you, John. Really important contributions about inclusivity. You know, I would say as a very practical matter in our work, when we are accepting applications for paralegal training, and Shola could talk about this, but we do interviews with people, and we actually reserve at least 50% of our spots for women, for one. We prioritize certain communities that are more informal or are poor, because that's the focus of our work. And often we reserve certain numbers of spaces for people that are of particular ethnic minorities that, like, you know, traditionally have been marginalized, Egun and Hausa and others in Lagos and in Port Harcourt, so that we try to make sure that we have good representation. But I guess to Amina's point, it's frankly always a struggle, and I don't think that changes. I think that we simply have to always put attention and focus on it to make sure that that we're not, how do I put it? I think in some ways, it's always easier to work with people that have more education or that are better off. And there's a tendency within all civil society work, but also within the legal empowerment community, to kind of float upwards and work with people that are better and better off, rather than people that are more and more marginalized. At least that's a reflection that I have had. Maybe one last call before we really dive into the conversation in our next 30 minutes about supervision and support after training. Are there other people that have questions about training or training models or reflections based on what you've heard your colleagues say? You know, the floor is wide open, and everything is game.
Andrew, you know, when I think about the ideology underpinning legal empowerment and how we apply legal empowerment in our work, essentially what we're trying to do is democratize the law. The law is not just for a few people. The law is for everybody, whether you've gone to school, whether you've not gone to school, whether you can, you know, read or not. The law is for everybody, and it should be able to work for everybody in a form that they understand. So essentially what I'm saying is, as rule of law communities, the law should work for us. We don't work for the law. So when we look at how we are applying legal empowerment, how we are training, how the people at the communities will be able to understand the law, so it makes sense for them, so they have effective and meaningful justice. I think it calls for a flexibility, as John Lahai was saying, in terms of how we get there. In terms of how it could be through the student lawyers, it's fine, I agree. But the masses who are on the ground, we should also tailor our approaches to meet them. And I think to encourage the thinking of democratizing this animal, this big thing called the law, it's just a reflection on my part.
Can I
Absolutely. Please, Amina, the floor is yours.
I remember when we first started, that was many years ago, and we were like, you must have at least secondary school education. You must, you know, we had all these great ideas of what anybody who wanted to be trained as a paralegal should have. But then when we want our focus being in the rural communities, we realized that, look, if we want people to understand and to be able to resolve issues for themselves, if we insist on certain criteria. In fact, I remember we had this great idea of you should be able to also speak English. But then in the community, they don't speak English. It's Hausa. So why are you going to train anybody in English? And then they go to, and in the community, it's another language. So we had to relook at what we were doing and bring it down to the level that it can be understood, and not be so, also not be so insistent that it has to be this way. It's about us being flexible, like Amy said. We need to be, because we want justice to be available to everybody, irrespective of who you are. So it's about us looking at how we model it to suit ours. And that is why, you remember, I don't know, Amy, if you remember, and Andrew, but when we were, okay, no, Amy, you were not there, but when we were having the first set of meetings with the Legal Aid Council, there was another organization who was quite insistent that the paralegal trainings should be at the university standard. So you had to go to university to become a trained paralegal. And we were like, no, because in the communities, we don't have people who there's some communities that nobody goes to school. So that means that community is going to be excluded. And we need to have something that works for us all. So yes, if we want, we can have a branch of paralegals that go through the university and get trained and come out with their certificates. And then we have those, and that's our community-based paralegals that get trained and understand what they can do. And a lot of what they do, even in the community, some of them, they do mediate, but they don't even realize that what they're doing actually is paralegal work. So it's just building up on those skills that they already have and showing them some additional skills that they need to make sure that, confidentiality and things like that, and having ethics so that if you don't go demanding payment or stuff, and you make it suit the community and get the people, make it work for them. Yeah, so it's making the justice work for us.
Absolutely, Amina. It reminds me of many instances when we've done quizzes orally for some paralegals because they weren't able to read or write, or certainly done trainings in other languages other than English to be able to reach communities that don't have any people that speak English and reach those populations. Super important reflections. I heard someone else coming in.
Yes, I still want to join colleagues, Jumbul and Jallo and Lahai on this paralegal thing. I mean, he's talking about. Our paralegals are trained. They go to the communities. They stay in the communities to support community people. They sit with them to understand their problems, identify active clients. We have people who are really committed, whose interests are genuine to pursue remedy. So sometimes, like Jumbul said, we cascaded some of the issues of how we handle, of how we support communities. So from the paralegal training, the paralegals are trained to go to the communities, to work with the community people, to provide legal empowerment for these people. So the first thing they do, identify, understanding the problem, identify the active clients, and then increasing awareness of the problem with community. They work with this community, share results of the fact finding in the community, and then set goals. So all of these things, the paralegal work closely with the community people to take action or to pursue for remedy. So we give them the independent way to handle or to make decision on the problems affecting them. You see, so it is not about training paralegals, elite paralegals who may go or may not go to the community, but the paralegals have a huge task to go back and transfer the education, dedication to the community people.
Thank you, Fatmata.
Let's say provide legal education work aimed at empowerment. It's trying to reach a broader community, including those who do not have active cases.
Thank you, Fatmata. Really, really important reflections and super insightful about strategies you all are using to ensure maximum inclusivity. Amy, did you want to come back in on this point, or did you have another provocation to share?
No, I choose peace now. But that's just on a lighter note. I see that Lawrence's hand has been up for some time. So if he could contribute.
Please,
Yes.
Lawrence, come in.
All right, excellent. I think the conversation that is happening now circles basically around closing the civic space and democratizing what this whole work that paralegals do is about. And I'm inclined more to think that in the work that we do, drawing from it, listening to others, it is context-based. Besides that, our paralegals should not necessarily only be restricted to university degree holders. There are people that may not go to the formal school, but understand the context of their community, and they're already doing the work. All you need to do is help them understand how to bring their integrity up to the space and follow some ethical principles. So once you're allowing them to do that and closing the civic space in ways that rule of law and justice is being provided for the necessary people, I think then the community is served in ways that they should be served. So for me, it's firstly about how the community that we're serving, are they getting justice? Are the paralegals working with the communities in ways that they're not trying to work for the community, but they are trying to work with the community? Because I think working for the community brings a little bit of arrogance and superiority onto Bay. But when you
Thanks, Lawrence. Sorry, you cut off at the end there. I'm not sure if you finished or if it's a connection issue. Hi, Lawrence. Well, maybe I'll thank you, Lawrence. That was a really, I think, important reflection about particularly about working with communities versus working for communities. I think that really cuts across and gets to the heart of what is empowerment itself, and maybe a distinction between legal empowerment versus legal aid or legal services or something like that. And I have quite a few questions, including questions about paralegal support and supervision, but I don't want to close this conversation about kind of training. So does anyone else have a question or intervention on this topic? Please, the floor is open. If not, I'll press ahead. Good. Well, I think all of these conversations are very intertwined, so I'm sure we'll go back as we go forward. And in that we have, I don't know, 20 more minutes or thereabouts, we wanted to also touch on what happens after training. And we've talked about this a little bit already. And so I guess I'll just throw out a question to start with. What is the relationship between
Have we lost Andrew, or is it me?
Oh, hi, Amina. I can hear you. Oh, sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we're getting you.
Yes,
okay,
we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So just to throw initial question out to get the conversation started, what's the relationship between our respective organizations as organizations that do training of paralegals and the paralegals after they've finished training? How formal is that relationship, or how informal is that relationship? Are paralegals supervised, or are they supported? These words have different meanings. and would love to pass the baton over to maybe Jallo to come in on either of those questions.
Yes, and thank you very much. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, our paralegals actually haven't gone through a formal training, but they've received snapshot training from Namati and Usiwa. Since the training, just after this training, the paralegals goes back out to their different locations and communities where they are based to provide their day-to-day paralegal services to the communities. In terms of our support that we do provide for paralegals are diverse in terms of ensuring that all the logistics that support the paralegals need to do their work on a more effective and efficient is provided for them. For example, we ensure that the movement of paralegals are swift by providing for them, for example, like motorbikes, and those motorbikes, of course, are fueled regularly to ensure that they have fuel in their motorbikes to go out in the field on a routine basis or on an emergency basis, because those are one of the obstacles that we faced by the police or the family support unit when responding to cases out in the field. Most of the time, this police will say that we don't have we don't have fuel in the vehicles, we don't have fuel in motorbikes, so we cannot respond to cases, emergency cases in the community. Well, that is where the difference lies between the paralegals and the police officers. Our paralegals have motorbikes and provide them with fuel on a more regular basis. That's one support that we provide for them. And we also ensure that in terms of communication, they are not left behind. What we have done is that all our paralegals are placed on closed user group network, CUGs. That is, the communication is not limited. In case they go out in the field and they encounter any problems or they need additional information from their colleagues, paralegals, or from the legal officers, they can call the paralegals and talk as many minutes as possible. 30 minutes, 1 hour, without even worrying about, oh, I don't even have to talk in my phone to call the legal officer for advice. So that communication also has to another support that we will provide for paralegals. And we also have, materials, resource materials that we do provide for them to make in reference to on a more regular basis. For example, like we have some manuals, Smart for Justice. We have manuals from Namati. We go into Namati website and get some resource materials there. And so once in a while they do reference those materials in terms of how the ethics, the skills, and the methods that they normally use to engage communities. So those are the support that we normally provide. In terms of the supervision, of course, it's just a one-way jacket. The lawyer or the legal officer is always standing by, waiting for support, waiting for any concern or any issues that these paralegals may have when they're out in the field. And in addition to that, there are certain things, there are certain cases that the paralegals do come across out in the communities that they will need, for example, like the law enforcement units, the police and all the rest of it. So we make sure that our relationship between the paralegal office and the police or the family support unit is very cordial. Sometimes even when there's a matter at the police station that they think is purely a case of civil nature, the police do refer those matters to our paralegal office for resolutions. And even the same goes to the magistrate court in Waterloo, Rural District. When there are cases that they think it's not due, it's not the case that it's not supposed to go to court, the magistrate will just, let me just send this to the paralegal office. So these are the basic supports and supervision that we provide for our paralegals on a more day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Jallo. Really, really helpful. So variety is financial support for transportation, support for communications, so that they can get lots of advice and exchange with others, support from additional manuals and linking with authorities, all really, really wonderful. I wonder if any of our colleagues from IWay want to come in. Ishmael, would you like to say anything about how your relationship with paralegals after they've been trained is different from what Jallo has said of LEWAF in Sierra Leone?
Hello, everyone. Just like my colleague mentioned earlier, you know, our paralegals come from rural communities where they have low level of literacy, and so there's a lot of supervision and also follow up with regard to their service provision. In some cases, we have some of our paralegals as part of the team for monitoring other paralegals. That is, those experienced paralegals are used now as monitoring officers to other paralegals, where they visit other paralegals in other communities to see how they conduct their services, like the community sensitization, and also if it is interviews, how do they hold their interviews, how do they conduct with the client, and also with the institutions they are being assigned to deal with. So I think our interactions with paralegals has been great, because like some of our female paralegals, initially when we started, you see, she herself doesn't have that confidence to face any person, you know, like to face a group of people, to talk to them. But now we have female paralegals that will be able to have a say during meetings. You know, she can be able to now say, okay, this is what I think should be done, this is what should be done, which we don't have that earlier when we first started this paralegal services. So I think there are a lot of changes happening. In some of our police stations, we have experience where police officers now call for a particular specific female paralegal in one of the LGS. So for services she provide in that location. So they call her, okay, I have this case, please, if you can come in, because it's a civil case, I would like you to come in and maybe handle the case. So that is because they are really, you know, there is this connection and synergy between the police and that and those paralegals. There is that synergy. So they are confident that she can be able to provide the services she needed to provide in that. I think that is all I can say, unless you need any clarifications, I can add more. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ishmael. I think that was really insightful. And aside from communication support, transportation support, support linking with authorities, I've heard now a couple times. Of course, kind of legal backstopping for cases that need to go to court. Are there other kinds of support that haven't yet been mentioned that that any of us, this is a question to all of us, that any of us are providing?
Yes, Andrew, actually there is that support also, even though it's not really happening much, but there are sometimes we do provide them with some sort of support for maybe communication, and also for maybe transport. Is in the service provision. That is not always even do, and also we provide, some of them are also provided like for each of the LGAs, because they have a coordinator, assistant coordinator, and you know, a group of them per local government area. So there is a Android phone that we have provided with them, so that they can, you know, you can take pictures. If it is audio you want to take, you know, they can use that Android phone for that. So that is one of the some of the other ways we do support them. If they need any assistance also regarding maybe technical support, maybe with regard to let's say the tools they use in data collection, we also provide that with them. So usually we make photocopies here if it is forms, if it is if it is even digital form. Sometimes we do have that, so we do photocopy for them, and for digital form, even though that one, due to the level of their literacy, was really hard getting them use that digital aspect of it. But something we are still working on to see them, you know, it really simplifies the work, and also it's more faster than, you know, maybe if it is using the paperwork. So if you have digitalized tools, we could fasten the work we do. I think so that is it. And
wonderful. Thank you, Ishmael.
Andrew, Andrew?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, to your question about the kind of support that maybe is not really given, or maybe I am not aware of, is the, you know, psychological or psychosocial support that comes with this work, because this work is hard. The kind of cases, the kind of cases that we encounter, whoever you are, you know, really can affect your psychological well-being. So I'm wondering if in the training of community-based paralegals or whatever kind of paralegals, and in the kind of the support they need, if in training they are made aware that these are the signs to look for when you're feeling, you know, worn out. And in terms of supporting you, this is where you can go for you to be supported for your mental wellness, and so that you can continue this work well. I have, you know, it's scanty, the kind of information I'm seeking towards, you know, the psychological support of community paralegals. I'm wondering if anybody, even here, or if JEI, you do this kind of support.
Yes, Amy. Actually, yes, that is also part of the training curriculum. Yeah, you know, where how to interview people, and how to also identify whether the person needs psychosocial support or something. The thing is, you know, we do train them on that as well. But the thing is at some level. That is why we work together with also other institutions like the Waraka Center, what do they call it? That the SAC Center, Sexual Assault and Referral Center. You know, so they have expertise in psychosocial support and sort of things like that. So we have linkage with them, and yeah, so that is, we have that with the clients. The clients can be referred to those places, and also for the paralegals, and also for the paralegals within themselves, if there are any cases they want to take in, but they cannot have the
Hi, Ishmael, it seems your connection is going a bit in and out. Ishmael, I think
those cases, because of legals to handle, so they get themselves out of now the training for that.
Thanks, Ishmael. And maybe I'll just add, Amy, it's a really important question. And I think I would start by saying it's something that we don't do well enough. And I can speak for my own work, but I think probably all of us in one way or another could do better in terms of providing the types of psychosocial support that paralegals themselves need in facing all of the trauma that they're always facing. I would say in our experience, we have there's very limited psychosocial support in Nigeria generally. I would say it's a bit stigmatized, unfortunately. We have referred and gotten help for some of our paralegals, but it's more one-off than it really ought to be. And it's definitely something that we're working on, trying to find kind of a more sustained or structured approach to. And frankly, the same would be true about other forms of healthcare. We've been ongoing for now quite a long time, trying to figure out how to support our paralegals to access better health services, whether through some kind of insurance or otherwise. Again, trying to figure out what a more structured and systematic way to provide those that necessary support could be, and we haven't actually found out the right solution yet. It's a really challenging nut to crack. That's my own reflection. Does anyone else have a reflection on that particular point?
Yes, Andrew.
Jalo, go ahead.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, Amy, what you are trying to ask in terms of psychosocial support for paralegals, honestly, we haven't actually been thinking of that in a very constructive and structured way. We take it as a kind of a routine activity. So, for example, like once every month, we like to bring our paralegals together and then help them out in terms of let me just give an example of an incident that took place in the paralegal office in Waterloo, very not less than 3 weeks ago. The paralegals were there, they were mediating cases, and the lady that went and reported the matter, for some reason, they just fell down and died on the spot in the paralegal office. So the paralegals were there, they were all just dumped. I said, oh my goodness. So they called me, and I sent my colleagues out there, and so that scene alone for the paralegals is not very healthy for themselves. So I have to ask them, you know what, you go home and rest for 2 days, relax yourself, and then you come back. But that was the same. That's it. So we haven't actually paid too much attention in terms of providing psychosocial support for paralegals. But I think this is an opportunity now, for us to say that it is really, really important. Once in a while, we do have a program.
Can I add something? I think psychosocial support
almost similar in the same context, so yes. So that is it. Yeah, that is it, Andrew.
I think psychosocial support is very important. It's something that we also don't think about. And it's not only just for the paralegals. I think it's even for us ourselves, because sometimes you do reach a point when you just feel really stressed out, and you just don't know, like where to go to offload how you're feeling, especially when you keep receiving cases and they're so negative, when it's this woman coming because of lack of maintenance from the husband, and you keep getting it gets into you. But then the thing is that donors, like for projects, maybe you want to do a long-term project, but it's not something that donors want to fund. And at the same time, it's also not people with counseling skills. They're not that many, and they're already bogged down with the number of cases that they handle generally from the public. So I guess it's maybe something that we should consider, even if it's basic counseling training, that organizations, we should be able to have something like that, so that, and have a place that we can all come together and we can just, not so much as offload, but it's just a relaxing place where we're not talking about work or challenges, but everybody just gets that opportunity to be able to unwind. So it is important, especially today and with COVID and everything that's happening, economic issues, it's a lot of stress that people are having at the moment.
Thanks, Amina. I just to acknowledge that it's now 3:30 or past 3:30, which is around the time that I believe we're aiming to round up. However, the conversation has been really, really interesting and dynamic. I still have lots of questions I'd like to put out there, but I wanted to say if anyone needs to jump off, by all means, and I think maybe we aim to round up in the next 10 minutes or so. And so I guess one other question, this is a totally different tack, but I think is kind of interesting to consider as well. What happens if one of your paralegals or one of the paralegals you've trained that you've been supporting, how do I put it, does something wrong, violates the code of ethics, or otherwise? In your kind of ongoing paralegal support or supervision models, are there disciplinary procedures? Can people be fired as paralegals, or not? That's a question I wanted to put out to everyone, to hear how others have handled those kinds of issues coming up, as I'm sure no doubt we've all seen them in various ways.
Yeah, Andrew, can I come in because I'm right at the forefront. Just very recently, it happens to me, to Liwa. Yeah. Apart from the fact that the paralegals are specialized set of individuals compared to the ordinary staff within this, for example, like the finance staff, the administrative staff, the program staff, and all the rest of it. The paralegals, I consider them as specialist staff within the system. But notwithstanding, they also have the same terms, they are working on the same terms and conditions just like any other staff, which means, for example, like you're not supposed to, to come to the office late, you come to office on time, you leave the office on time, and then you're not supposed to consume alcohol, at working hours. You're not supposed to steal the office property. You're not supposed to misuse office property, so on and so forth. So they are all of them right across the same terms and conditions of employment that we want to provide give issue to them. But then I had an experience quite recently that one of my strong paralegals was involved in an activity that is completely unethical. Out in the community, and I've received complaints upon complaints about the unethical behavior of that paralegal. Taking money from people which otherwise he is not supposed to do, because all the service they provide is more or less absolutely free of charge. We don't ask a dime from anybody in order to provide our legal services to them. But then this, of course, all of them knows about this. But this has been going on behind the scene without my knowledge. So, sometimes when they say, when you push me to the wall, I'll bounce back, and the secret have to come out. I received the complaint. I called the paralegal, conduct investigation. I thought that was the only problem. I said, okay, well, if this is what you've done and you've never done it before, I'll give you a strong warning. I gave the warning, and I even did relocation of staff. I moved the staff from one district to another district, just to ensure that I maintain the staff, and then I take him off from where people knows him as doing things very unethical. But it still didn't work. So complaints just keep coming in upon complaints coming in of the same nature. I said to myself, I have to maintain the credibility of the system. I have to maintain the credibility of the system, not only in the eyes of the government, but also in the eyes of the public that we are serving. Because if the people depend on the service that we provide for them, they rely on the service that we provide for them, they have to believe in the system, and they have to ensure that the system is there for them, not against them. So for that reason alone, I had to call up a board meeting I presented the case to them. I called up a strategic management meeting. It wasn't so easy for me. By the end of it all, everyone will just say that even the legal officer who is supervising the paralegal is deeply in the issue. But because the matter was so complex, and they thought that if this continues, it will actually dent the credible image of the system, they will have no option but to let him go. It wasn't an easy thing, but for the best interest of the service to provide for the people and for the government as well, we said, well, enough is enough. It's not one case, it's not two cases, so many cases just popping up. People coming in to make complaint of the same nature of the crime, taking money out of force. I mean, for us, it was difficult because he was my lead paralegal and he knows the job. He has gone through several trainings, but I've even sent him out on a conference in Ivory Coast. So all those expertise, all those training that he's gone through, but looking at what he did, which is completely unethical, and we thought this shouldn't continue. So we have no option but to let him go.
Thanks, Jallo. Honestly, sounds like a very difficult situation, and certainly pieces of it resonate with experiences that we've had. I wonder if anyone else would like to come in on this, the question of, I guess, when a member of the team crosses a line or breaches ethics or commits a crime or otherwise, how do we handle that in our kind of paralegal support process?
Andrew, I would maybe just adding and maybe just also to expand the conversation a bit, I would assume that the paralegal, in as much as it's very important the work they're doing at the community, they're not above the law. So if they are employed by your organization, then I would think that the labor laws apply to him or her. But if they're a volunteer, then I think there's a set of rules within the organization, a constitution, a code of conduct. And the code of conduct, I am assuming, has consequences for the breach of an act. So when it comes to the application of the law, the paralegal, in my humble opinion, is not above the law and should face the consequences, because then we don't want to be in a situation where you want to excuse somebody because, my goodness, they're doing important work at the community. Oh my goodness, look at this person, they're from this and this. Of course, you want to apply understanding, but the law should be fair. Because one thing is that what Jallo was pointing to is we have a contract too with the community that we serve, and they're observing. If we were to look the other way around or be lenient to what this paralegal is doing in the community, then it's just a very bad example. At the same time, this is the community paralegal who is supposed to be holding accountable the state, who I'm sure is even doing worse than he's doing. So it puts us in a very precarious situation. Of course, I'm not calling
exactly.
I'm not calling for us to be righteous, but I think in this case, the law will guide us on what to do.
It's a very thorny issue. Amy, I appreciate your reflections on that, and very much in agreement. That doesn't make it any simpler in the actual practice of it. I think, as Jallo explained, it was very painful, and certainly we've had experiences like that as well. I don't, maybe, so we're at 3:45 almost. So I think this is kind of our last bus stop for this conversation, although I'm sure we could continue talking and talking and talking. I wonder if at this point we could transition and do a very quick around the house, please, like no more than 10 seconds, reflection from everybody. How are you enjoying these calls? Is this something that, has this been interesting, rewarding? Is there something we could do better? Is the frequency of the calls also once every 2 months? Is this working for you? Is this too much? Is this too little? Maybe we can run right around the house but please, 15 seconds apiece. Could I call on Patrick? Patrick, would you like to go first? Any reflections on how you see these calls? Is it, are there things we could be doing better? If not, I could jump to John. John Lahai, would you like to jump in?
Yes, I think it's a learning package that should, I mean, it's okay, timing is okay. I think it's a good learning package and it must have to go on.
Hi, John.
But just to touch on the aspect.
Go ahead.
Did you get me?
We lost you for just a second.
I was saying that it is a learning package that must have to go on if we are to get to where we are all aiming at in terms of continuing with the work of community paralegals. But just to add, just to take from a previous discussion for CAJ, it means in your curriculum, there is need for you to add the psychosocial aspect. It is critical. It is critical. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. So positive feedback. We like that. But critical feedback would be helpful as well. Shola, any quick reflections? 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Should these conversations go on? Is once every 2 months a good frequency?
Yes, very well. It's quite interesting. I think I appreciate. I'm glad to be on the call. Especially, I must appreciate Amy's contribution, particularly about the psychological support, not only for paralegals, even for weak practitioners too. Jalo and everyone on the call. So it's quite interesting. I think we need to keep it up. Thanks, Andrew.
Brilliant. Fatmata, any reflections from your side? Things that we could do better on the call or in between calls or otherwise?
Well, the timing for the call is appropriate, and the ideas or experience sharing is awesome. Just as colleagues said, we need to continue because it's a learning process. And I believe we're all making a headway, learning from one.
And one call every 2 months is a good spacing out for you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Patrick, would you like to come in? 10, 15 seconds reflection. How is this working for you? Any ideas for how we could do it better? Might be having challenges with his mic. Ishmael from Iway, would you like to come in? Any quick reflections on how you think this is going or how we could do it better?
Andrew, Andrew, I think this is a timely conversation actually. I think if we can also maybe expand it to other participants, I think it's really interesting, really benefit from this conversation. If you can have more participants attending, it will really I think be helpful, because like just now, you know, I think somebody from some efforts they are putting, you know, in getting paralegal licensing and also the curriculum, which we are more of us here, so we can now and also, you know, like put the effort to together rather than. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishmael. Your mic was going a bit in and out, so I'm not sure I got all of it. Except I heard that you thought broadening the group would be powerful. Amina, any quick reflections from your side? What's working? What's not working? Is the frequency a good frequency? Be very welcome.
Yeah, the frequency is fine, once every 2 months, and there's enough notice as well for us to diarize and remember that we have this meeting. So to me, it's fine as it is, especially looking at our work schedules. In terms of like the size, I quite like this group size. Maybe even if it's going to be expanded, not too much. Otherwise, then there's not much, it's not enough for people to share properly. For me, I really enjoyed today's meeting and I learned a lot, especially the psychosocial. In fact, we're currently writing a proposal and I just said to the team that is something we should include as one of the things we should put in the proposal, psychosocial training. So there's learning here, and to see that basically all of us it's the same issues that we have. Doesn't matter which country we're in, it's basically the same sort of issues and how we're trying to work to resolve those challenges that we face. So it's good. I liked it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amina. Thank you for all your contributions. Patrick, did you want to come in? But Patrick, I'm not hearing you. Can anyone else hear him? I didn't get that. I'm not. Maybe the microphone is not.
I didn't hear him either.
Hi, Patrick. Can you hear us? Oh, okay.
He seems
consequently, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Andrew, sorry.
John, please come in.
Yeah, Andrew, just to add one addition that I believe can add value to this entire process, a kind of follow-up action after all this discussion. For example, we discussed about curriculum. I mean, as an follow-up action, if we can start thinking of developing a hybrid curriculum for all of us in this region, I think that will add value to the process.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful suggestion. And yeah, as much as learning and experience sharing is a big goal of this, definitely collective action is also, and that's a really interesting idea that we'll pin and circle back to. So thank you for that. Amy Mutanu, would you like to say a few words? Any reflections from your sides?
For me, I think the conversations are going on quite well. We start small, but with a focus group who are committed and are open to sharing honest lessons from their work and from what they see. And that the fact that we're documenting this and sharing it to the wider public is something that is noteworthy as well, in the sense that even if we're small having this discussion, we're sharing it with a wider audience, so then they too can see where they are in their own progress. Just to share with you, so we shared this conversation and the Francophone group looked at it, and there were one organization was particularly happy and wanted if we could replicate the same kind of conversation for the Francophone community. So I'm really glad that these conversations are happening, but it's also happening at a time where we hope to deepen the learning for the field. It has been years and years that we've been doing legal empowerment work on the continent, and a lot of questions have been pointed towards what's the impact? should we change our training? Is legal empowerment sufficient? How does it look like for Anglophone? How does it look like for Francophone? So some of the things that I am learning, even just sharing with you, is that the concept of legal empowerment is one that we take for granted and assume that people know it and are using it, but it is something else altogether, and it takes different shapes and different forms. So I'm very happy with this direction. It's also a deep learning curve for me, and just to be able to also have, tangible practical steps moving forward, as John Lahai has shared with us.
Thank you, Amy.
I also really love the conversation today. It was very involving, and I think we uncovered things that just by looking at the program, I never thought we would have touched on. I like the intimacy of the group. The fact that we are not that many gives everyone a chance to air their views. What was the other thing? But one thing that I really like about the group is that it's not a conversation about, it's a conversation about what is really happening in the grassroots with people who intervene and people who work at the grassroots. It's not another African report that is being signed out there and being put in the shelves. It is the actual activists who are on the ground and who are doing the work and are willing to see the change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutano. And thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn my video on just to say a final, if I can. Maybe I can't.
Sorry, Andrew, could we all turn also on our video so we could take a picture at the end? It's unfortunate we lost some people.
Yeah. But I wanted to say a huge thanks to everyone. It's been a wonderful conversation today, and I appreciate everyone's honesty because it's important that we have spaces where we can share challenges that we're facing and do it among colleagues and find ideas for solutions and otherwise. So thank you everyone for all that you've shared, and really looking forward to the next conversation with all of you. So thank you.
Could we please all just turn on our videos so we could take a quick picture? And since this is our new normal, Adesola, is it possible to turn on your camera? Nice to see you. Patrick John Bull, is it possible to turn on your camera? Thank you. So in 1, 2, 3, say cheese. Cheese. One more time, cheese. There we go.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
See you all. We'll be in touch on email, but see you all in 2 months' time for another wonderful conversation.
Yeah, sure.
It was great. Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.